Welcome to Mentor Match Chats. I'm Michael Dunn, and today the topic is coaching, and I'm really excited to have two guests with me. You guys watching probably know one or both of these guys. I've got Dr. Martin Mendelssohn, and I've got Dylan Carver. And for those of you that don't know, Martin is resident faculty and executive vice president of practice growth at Spear Education, and he's also the founder of Metamorphosis Coaching. Hi, Martin. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Good to see you.
And we've also got Dylan Carver, and Dylan is founder and recruiter, career coach, and talent acquisition consultant at Carver Consulting. Dylan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, like I said earlier, the topic here is coaching. I actually have recently hired a coach, so this has become a topic increasingly over the last months and few years near and dear to my heart. And so I decided, well, let's bring on some experts here to talk about coaching. And right off the bat, I just want to ask a very nebulous or open-ended question here about coaching. And essentially, I think a lot of us, that word connotes, athletes, whether it be amateur or professional athletes. And I just want to talk about for a few minutes with you guys, to you, what is coaching, or what is professional coaching? What does it mean to you, and how does it differ from or does it differ from our normal, association with athletics and athletic coaching?
Dylan, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, coaching. I don't know that it means the same thing to one person as it does the other. I think it's very objective based. I think there are a lot of similarities to athletics, like you mentioned. Sometimes your coach may or may not have been there before, but they can see the field, they know the competition, they know the game, and they know the person. I think that's something that is big, is they have to know the person too. So, coaching, I think it has a different meaning for a lot of different subjects and different objectives.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. I mean, true coaching is just that. It's helping guide somebody from A to B, whatever their B is, without any judgment or preconceived notion. In fact, one of the things I often talk about is the fact that the word coach is actually almost a metaphor. And the word itself, it comes from several European languages, which means the thing that used to be pulled by a horse. And so that's the magic of coaching, as Dylan said. It's bringing you to another place, whatever that place is, and it is different for everybody. So
interesting, and we're going to get, I think, a little bit later, we're going to get to to that point of from A to B. Who needs a coach? Does everyone need a coach? I mean, should this little these chats or this podcast, whatever you want to call this, these video chats, really, are kind of geared towards people that we're familiar with in the dental industry, right? Whether it be people on the industry side like me, or people or dentists, or what have you. Is can everyone benefit from coaching, or is it only certain people need coaching? What are your thoughts on that, Martin?
So it's a really good question. I think it's like almost anything else. You're gonna have interest as well as get something out of it if you have the awareness enough that you need it. So does everyone need it? That's a hard question to answer. But what I will say is that if you're self-aware enough to sit back and kind of analyze things within your life, and you're in a place where, look, it's not like you have to be in a place that's bad or a place that you want to get out of, but oftentimes my clients, particularly my private clients, will say, I feel like there's something I'm missing. And so it's that self-awareness, that bit of angst, that bit of fuzziness that typically leads people to a coach. I think the other side of it, which likely Dylan can speak to as well, is, on the corporate side, certainly from a performance, or, if there's some, 360 evaluations that have been done, and there's some observations around how you could improve, that kind of comes into the corporate business coaching, if you will. But I think it all starts with the person. They have to be aware enough to want it, frankly.
Dylan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think the awareness is big. When you asked me the question, I thought, well, why wouldn't it help, right? So, I mean, no matter who you pick as a coach, whether they're highly experienced or not experienced at all, if it's somebody who understands you and can help you get from A to B, then it's valuable. It's two people putting their minds together. Two heads are better than one, right?
Absolutely.
But, so often my clients will come to me as, through their job search. And as a recruiter, I've been through that, hundreds, thousands of times with different people, and I know how those things work. And so that's, it's always nice to have that. I almost kind of think of like, big life decisions. You always talk to somebody, when you're going to buy a house, you have a realtor. But when you go to get a job, it's a 30-minute phone interview and a 2-hour live interview, and you make decisions based for potentially the rest of your life on that 2-3 hour interaction. So to have somebody there with you through that knows what's going on both sides of the table is I find extremely beneficial.
Is a coach different than a mentor?
So the way I was trained, they define coach, mentor, and consultant rather differently.
Yep.
So from my perspective, from my coaching background, a coach is somebody that has no agenda. They're bringing you from A to B, whatever B is, and it's neither good, bad, or indifferent. It just is. A mentor is somebody that has been there, done that, and can give you the wisdom and the guidance. And a consultant truly has an agenda to kind of satisfy your own specific business goals or other business objectives. That being said, so many times, almost in every conversation, there is typically a mix between the three. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, particularly if you're looking to a coach in a specific niche or a specific area. And so that has to be the case, that you have to draw from mentorship and consultativeness. There's just no way around it.
So we've talked about, defining a coach, what it means to you. So, as now this conversation is getting from A to B. I love that, by the way. I'm going to use that, throughout the rest of this conversation, as we're now getting from A to B. We kind of have this understanding of a coach and how it can vary. So now I'm in a position, let's say, where, I think I could use a coach. How do I find a coach? Dylan, what are your thoughts? How do I find a coach?
Yeah, great question. I think coaching is becoming something that's much more frequented in our culture these days, right? So, I think a good place is to start online, looking in your niche. Really, I think first you've got to understand your objective. Do you need a coach? Do you need a mentor? Do you need a life coach? Do you need a career coach? Kind of figuring out what that is, and then pursuing that. But obviously Google searches work, if you want somebody that's local, or if you want somebody that is in your niche, they're pretty easy to find, whether you're searching on Google or LinkedIn. I think that's a big place. Asking people as well, getting referrals. I think that would be my ideal suggestion, to get referrals from other people. Hey, I'm looking to hire a coach, and who do you know? Most likely somebody knows somebody. So, yeah.
Martin?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That everything Dylan said, and I've had experience too, and we may be getting into this later, just around coach and client clicking, if you will. And so typically coaches know other coaches, and we're all unique human beings, and I've had many a time where I've referred to a friend or a friend's referred to me, particularly if it as Dylan said, if it's in a given area like that's not really my jam, so I'm going to refer to my buddy John or Jane. And so word of mouth is huge. The connecting through the internet, as Dylan said, and as well as asking around to people who you admire, because now as coaching has become more prolific within corporate halls as well as personal and private halls, you'd be surprised how many people have hired a coach over the years. So asking people you trust, actually asking people that you've seen progress in your definition of progression is a great place to start. So.
And I just want to chime in here. It's going to sound a bit like an advertisement or a commercial, but it's not. It's not a paid endorsement. It's a free endorsement. But just thinking back to when I ran my own consultancy as a business, I built my business and practically almost 100% through LinkedIn. So I think, those of you that have watched us in the past, those of you that I'm connected with, you probably realize by now that I'm a huge, LinkedIn person, so to speak. Really a fan of LinkedIn. I think, just like you said, like minds tend to group together. So if you're using LinkedIn as that search engine, and just as you both said, you get in contact with one person who is either using a coach or is a coach, and like you said, if your particular needs are not what they, not their jam, as you put it, Martin, then probably in their network they've got a few other people that might be a better fit. Totally. And using that as a segue, I think, I may have jumped the gun, because the last question was, well, how do you find a coach? But I think the third question I want to ask here, and where we'll spend the rest of our time here, is, it's how do you ensure that person you find is a good match, is a good fit for you? And maybe more importantly, and the reason I said, maybe I jumped the gun, is, what pre-work does one need to do on oneself prior to even seeking out a coach? So there's two questions in there, but it's really, maybe the second one first. What do I need to do? What kind of introspection, what kind of work do I need to do on myself first before even seeking out a coach? And then how do I ensure that person is a good match? Dylan, what thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, great question. I think, I kind of touched on that earlier, that, in my opinion, I think the first thing you need to do while looking for a coach is understand your own objectives. What is B? Is B, is it you want to get to B and C, or do you want to get to X, Y, and Z? What is that? At least have an idea. You may not be able to define that specifically, but at least have an idea of where you want to start, a general area, right? The other thing I think to ensure the fit for a coach is, I think the number one prerequisite is to be understood, to feel like you're being understood by your coach. And Martin may be talking about this, that click is so important. If you're not understood by your coach, and your coach doesn't know what B is, they're never going to get you there. They're never going to guide you. They may even guide you in the wrong direction. So I think that's huge, is to have being understood, and have your objectives defined.
Yeah, I agree with Don 100%. There's two elements to this, the way I'm kind of parsing this in my brain. The first is, what within yourself, what do you need to do? What do you need to be prepared with? And Dylan's right. It's you have to have some idea of what you're looking to do or where you're looking to go. It may be fuzzy, and that's okay, but you need it really can't be, well, I'm just not happy. And, because in truth, that's great, but trained coaches are also trained to kind of identify those red flags, because one thing we didn't mention is I have a great respect for the art of coaching, the science of coaching, and the utilization of coaching in our society. But I also have a massive respect for therapy. And we as coaches cannot ever underestimate the need for our mental health professionals. And we need to understand those red flags to then appropriately refer, because that's really, really important. And part of my coaching relationship in the beginning, it's like, look, coaching's not therapy. And so we're going to be talking from today and where we're going to go tomorrow. Yesterday, it's more of a therapy thing.
Yeah.
And so we had that discussion. But of course, to the end of, the click thing. In fact, this just happened last week. I was having a conversation with an individual, and I thought it was for one thing. It turns out they were interested in talking to me about coaching. I really don't know the person well. And the way I structure my relationships, and many other coaches do too. You have an introductory conversation to see if you do click. And so many times people have approached me who actually know me, and in this case, he didn't. And I will always do that introductory conversation, because you just never know. Because coaching can get really personal and really deep very quickly. And sometimes the person just isn't ready, or they're just not comfortable with you, or vice versa. And it's really important to have that first conversation and then go, okay, we're mutually comfortable to proceed forward. Now let's start in a coaching relationship.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more, Martin. I think the consultancy, having that intro call is key. It's necessary. I would be skeptical of any coach that wouldn't offer that up.
Yep. Yeah,
right
100%. 100%. Yeah. Woo. Yeah. I think, Michael, you also mentioned like that was relative to how you started, or what you asked them to be prepared for.
Yeah. What kind of work does someone need to do on themselves, right? Because you pointed out it's not just I don't like my job, right? I mean,
right.
It shouldn't be I don't like my job. I mean,
right.
Let's face it here. I mean, if someone is seeking professional coaching, they are making an investment. They're making an investment in their time. They're making a monetary investment. I mean, that's one thing that I think, when going back to my previous question, that separates professional coaching from mentorship. I mean, this is a service that a coach is offering, and the person seeking that service is paying for it. So obviously, to make the most out of that investment, I would expect if you're seeking a coach, you need to do some work on yourself first. So, I think, it's important, because especially in the climate we're in economically, with the pandemic, and in our industry, especially with the slowdown, a lot of people have been furloughed and laid off and what have you. People may be considering, hiring or retaining a coach. So I'm just curious, what, aside from kind of identifying point A and point B, what other work do they need to do on themselves before they reach out and have that introductory consultation conversation?
Yeah, great question. Martin, you want to go?
Sure. Oh, of course. So typically what I do is because I'm assuming, Michael, that, at least you've had the introductory conversation, that there's some interest there. And even if that isn't, to your question, the initial questions I usually volley to a potential client is really, if at the end of this initial coaching client relationship, what would make it really, really successful for you? What would make you feel that, wow, that was really valuable?
Yeah.
So that's kind of number one. And a question in a similar vein, but yet much broader, is, okay, so in 3 years, think about what your life will be like if you could end up achieving what it is you're looking to achieve, whatever that may be. And it's an interesting question, because sometimes people don't know the answer to that. And that can lead to a whole fun conversation. In fact, that when I started the coaching relationship with my coach, which led me to become a coach, one of the most important, impactful, and powerful exercises he had me do was to actually write out what my ideal life looked like from a time I got up to the time I went to bed. What was my ideal day, which actually led to a move of my home and all kinds of wonderful life changes that I never would have gotten to if I hadn't sat down and thought about those broad questions that the coach can then take and focus you in on. So it's almost like, you're looking at a wide angle lens, and your coach, helps you to, twist the lens, old time cameras, in order to kind of focus that in. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Dylan?
I couldn't agree more. I think those are awesome steps to take, Martin. I need to be taking notes here on some of those things, but part of my philosophy, my thinking through, the motivational side of being a coach, actually has a lot to do with Cybernetics, which is a fantastic book. And if you haven't read it, it really talks about the visualization of where we want to be, and kind of putting yourself, walking through the small details of where do you want to be, how do you want to see it happen, and start to start to live it. In that book, it talks about an actual study that they did with, they took three groups. They had a focus group. They all shot free throws. So they had the focus group, they shot 20 free throws, and they went home. They didn't practice. They didn't think about it. The second group, they shot free throws and then physically practiced for months, physically. And then the third group, they shot free throws and mentally visualized practicing. And the similarities, I think it was 1% difference between the physical and the visualization of the practicing of free throws. So that's just, it's incredible what our minds can do for us when we start visualizing where we want to be, how we want to be, and building that mental picture of it. So, yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, you guys have given me a lot to take away from today's conversation. I love this concept of a coach being someone that helps you get from point A to point B. And, one of my key takeaways from today is that point A and point B are different from everyone, different for everyone. And, one person's point B is going to be different than another person's point B. And that's okay, obviously. And, there's lots of ways to find a coach. Obviously, the internet is everyone's friend these days. LinkedIn is everyone's friend. But, before you get too far into searching for that coach, I think, the other big takeaway here is, do that work on yourself. Understand what point B is, or point Z, or wherever it is. Understand what that is, a year from now, and if you can, 3 years from now. And then when you've engaged with someone or a few people in some introductory conversations before you make that investment, make sure you're having those conversations to determine that it's a good fit on both sides. Because again, a coaching relationship is different than a mentor relationship. There are some similarities. There's obviously, a whole Venn diagram here that we could go through with coaching and consultants and mentorship, but there are some differences. So before you make that investment, there's work you have to do on yourself, and there's, some work you've got to do ensuring it's a good fit with your potential coach. With that, I think we've come to the end of a Mentor Match chat. Dylan, before I wrap this up, Martin, Dylan, any final words of wisdom or thoughts here?
Dylan?
Yeah, the mic drop moment, right? No, I don't think I have too much that we haven't discussed. I think you hit the nail on the head, Michael. Make sure you understand yourself. Make sure you're understood by your coach as best as you can, even if it's fuzzy. Love the suggestion that Martin had about writing out where you want to be. Write out how you see your life once you obtain objective B. Otherwise, sometimes is that going to make you happy, or is it something else? Is it more deeply rooted? So I learned something there as well. So thank you, Martin. But,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. It's oftentimes it's said the magic of coaching happens between sessions, and to mirror what Dylan said, all about feeling that you're being heard. When you as a client are feeling like you're being heard, that's when that would be your indication that you're working with a coach that's really focused on you. Because often we talk about intuitive hits, and intuitive hits are all based upon listening. So we end up sharing back with you what we heard, and we're reading between the lines. We're reading the emotions and all those kind of things. And it just ends up being, or it ends up allowing you to see things very, very differently that may actually end up happening between sessions, not even at the session there. Because our job is just basically to ask you questions to make you think, to help you figure out how to get to point B from where you are today. So it's an honor to help our clients figure that out as they go through their own life journeys.
Well, excellent. It's been an honor for me to have both of you on today. Dr. Martin Mendelssohn, thank you. Dylan Carver, thank you. And for those of you who are enjoying this Mentor Match chat, of course, thank you. And if you have comments, I'm sure wherever you're watching this, there's probably a place to put your comments. So send your comments in the comment box, or email me or call me or whatever. And we look forward to presenting another timely topic on the next Mentor Match Chat. So thanks a lot, guys. See ya.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.